Good morning and welcome to the AskWeldon Show, episode 204. Don't fall into bad habits, and is perfectionism good or bad? My name is Weldon, and this is the AskWeldon Show, and it's named that because you call in your questions related to esport performance, esport psychology, sports psychology. Those are the main topics that people call in for the show because I am a League of Legends coach and a sports psychology trainer. However, I welcome and am open to all sorts of questions, whether we're talking about relationships or business or whatever may interest you and that you think that I could give you insight on. So please call in your question, anchor.fm/Weldon Green. And I talked about this yesterday in my stream, but I would like you to consider calling in your question, even if you think you know what I'm going to answer and you know that the thing stopping you is just action. You're like, well, I already know the answer and it's inaction. Because what you provide is you provide a context, your own specific context, and a very nicely worded question that could help a large amount of other people, right? So if you can kind of like set aside your own discomfort for a while and ask the question anyway, even though you know what I'm going to answer, what you do is you provide a new and interesting context and story with which to frame the answer to a question that maybe I've answered before or answered in some certain way, and in a way that might hit at a certain segment of viewers, right, that have the same context as you but do not necessarily know the answer that you know and who also aren't calling into the show. So I recommend that even if you think that it's not really that good a question, or it's a great question, but you don't need to answer it because you already know what you need to do. You just need to do it. Give it a shot. Call it in anyway. Anchor.fm/Weldon Green. It's a little app. I'm not sponsored by it or anything. It's just a really good podcasting app for calling in questions. I'm going to lower the camera a little bit. There we go. All right. Let's jump into the show. Okay. 25 minutes ago, I recorded this show, the entire show, all the answers to all these questions. And during that little segment that you just saw, I muted my mic. And then I recorded the entire show without audio. So here we are. I'm back again. The energy's a little bit lower. You may notice. You won't notice because you're not on the live show with me. So if you come to twitch.tv/MindGames, what you would have noticed was 25 minutes of very high energy, excited answering of all these questions. And then the desperate realization that I'd recorded 30 minutes of fire, insane, awesome content with no mic on. And now I'm wondering if I'm going to be able to bring it, and also if I'm going to get my same answers back. And I'm thinking they're going to be even better answers this time around because I've had a chance, to practice and refine them. They're going to be shorter, tighter, much more refined, and direct, and everything is ready to go there. However, I kind of lost a little bit of my adrenaline, so we'll see about that. And the first thing I'm going to do is prep the pictures that I put on the previous stream. So, okay, these are ready now. Now I can show those. And then we're going to jump into the questions. Now, this first question is a two-parter, and I'm going to answer the first part, and then I'm not going to play it again for the second part, so you're going to have to... But I will remind you what the second question was. And anyway, it's only the last maybe 10 seconds where he recommends the second question. So let's dig into this first one from Bojan about bad habits.
Hey Weldon, this is Bojan from the Netherlands. I've got two questions orbiting a bit around the same subject. So I've used your Mac program. It was really helpful. I gained a lot of ELO. Then after that, I stopped doing the good habits like meditating, being mindful in-game. So I fell off the horse and I got really sucked into the game again. People around me noticed it. Then I talked to them. Now I'm back on the horse and trying to use the Mac program again. And I already see like minor results in my actions and in my mindset. My questions are, how do I make sure that I don't go back into old or bad habits? And the second question is, how do I make sure that I can feel the triggers, or that I notice the triggers and use the mindfulness to fully extend, for instance, when I'm trading or when I'm walking to lane? Thanks in advance and have a good show. Bye bye.
Thank you for wishing me to have a good show, even though I didn't have a good show the first time through. All right, so that's he's talking about the MAC program, which is my training program, and I'll talk about it a little more during the second question because that's more into the nitty-gritty of something that I teach in the program. But for this first question, how do you deal with old habits, and how do you not fall into old habits again when you're kind of working on yourself? Most of the issue with people and habits is they see it something like this. All right, so I have this picture that I pulled up. This is the trans-theoretical model of behavior change, and people kind of see it as it goes through. Oh, pre-contemplation. Okay, I don't have a problem. Contemplation. Okay, I do have a problem. Preparation. All right, let's solve this problem. Action. All right. And planning, I'm going to do it. And then maintenance. Yay, it's solved, done. But that's not really how it works. What it actually looks like is this, where you go through these stages and you can fall off at any time and you can come back at any time and you can relapse and you can get slightly better but not perfect yet, and then you have to go through it again, right? And recognize, oh, I didn't make it all the way there. So when you're considering the idea of like this binary kind of black and white concept of like good habit, bad habit, do or not do, I'm doing it or I'm not doing it. Behavior changes is a combination with personality change, which is like changes over time, right? So you have to think of your attrition rate as being really important in this, and your ability to repeat this cycle as being really important. So I'm going to break this problem up into a couple different steps. First one, doing good habits again. So starting them again. This is fundamentally different than anything we're going to talk about with the bad habit side. Okay, so just think about this as a completely separate problem. Okay, first of all, don't think about this as something that you solve and then you're done with it. I want you to take these problems, pick them up, put them in the middle of the table, and say that this is it. If you can solve the whole restarting thing and the whole not doing the bad habits thing, you wouldn't need like you'd be Superman. You'd be the Superman. You'd be the perfect person, right? I'm not talking about the superhero. I'm talking about the combination of words. Nobody can do that because the problem is the whole restarting thing again and the whole bad habits thing again. So put these problems, put them in the middle of the table, put them front and center, and make this your mission because this is the actual issue, right? So we'll break it up into smaller pieces, like I said. Let me make this go away now. First one is the restarting of good things that you want to do again, and this involves removing barriers. So you want to sweep them away. And let me give you an example of one of mine so that you can understand the concept of like what these barriers look like and how they can be a little bit related to action. So in 2012, 2013, I wanted to write more blog posts, and I had a number of barriers related to that, kind of like with my mindset and not knowing what to write about, et cetera, et cetera. So the first barrier that I needed to sweep away was that I wouldn't sit down to write it. So I'm decided that I would sit down to write my blog article. And the second barrier that I faced was that I didn't know what I wanted to write about, and I didn't know how I wanted to start it, what story I wanted to tell to kick it off and pull in people's attention. So in order to remove these barriers, what I did was I decided that my contribution for the day would be I would sit down. This is step one. Take the action of sitting down at the computer with the intention to write the blog article, okay? Separate that into its own separate thing, okay? It's not like I'm thinking like, oh, today I need to write a blog article. Like today sometime. No, I need to do three things today. Number one, I need to sit down in front of the computer with the intention to write a blog article or to work on my blog article. Number two, I need to open a Google document. That's pretty easy, It's a lot easier than writing a blog article. Okay, I can open Google Docs. That's not hard. Okay, sit down at the computer, open Google Docs. Wow, I've already done two things. Check. Awesome. What's the third thing? Okay, write the title and the first sentence. Okay, so then I have to sit there and I have to think a bit. I think, what do I want to write about? Okay, how do I craft the title? What should the title be? Okay, what story do I want to tell? How do I want to hook into this? Okay, write the first sentence. Done. Check. I've already accomplished three things. I sat down with the intention to work on the article. I opened the Google document, and I wrote down the title, and I wrote down the first sentence. Now I'm here. May as well keep working. And that's usually what happened, is when you look at the barriers, a lot of them are related to like in either environmental barriers, things that are standing in your way in terms of like coordination, like not having gym clothes. So you pack your bag at night, and you make sure you bring it with you at work every single day. Or like mental barriers, like I don't know what I'm going to write about, and the whole task is so big that I don't even know where to start. In which case, you break it down to like the 3 smallest starting actions, and you make that your accomplishment for the day, and then you're done. And so when you take these barriers off the table, you kind of can start getting into the zone. By the time I got to that point in my articles, I was really excited, and I was writing them, and I was making progress on them. And then I might only write a few paragraphs because my goal wasn't to write a blog article. Remember, it was to sit down and write the first sentence. So I might continue on and write a few paragraphs, but then I'd be excited about it. I'd be thinking about it. I'd go to sleep on it. I'd wake up the next day with more ideas. I'd be motivated to work on it. I would sit down again, like of my own volition. So you're trying to get away. I want you to analyze the barriers that stand in front of you starting your habit again, and I want you to break them apart into smaller actions and or take care of them with a system to remove the barrier conveniently and easily, and then it's done. Like, for example, this Twitch and YouTube show. The barrier is I didn't like to do post-production editing. So now I do all my editing within the OBS app as I'm doing it live, which means that sometimes then my mic is muted and the entire show is scrapped. By the way, I lost my water bottle, so I'm drinking out of a jar today. That's what that's all about. Okay, bad habits. How to stop bad habits. Let me see if I can remember what I talked about for this one. Basically, I want you to focus on the cold turkey moment. So there's a lot of different hacks and tips and tricks you can do to kind of wean yourself off bad habits. You can get people to help you. You can, put fat pictures of yourself somewhere and agree to release them to the internet. There's something Tim Ferriss said, agree to release them to the internet if you don't lose weight. You can try to motivate yourself. You can wire up your long-term values, and you can think about why it's bad for you in general. But really, what you want to do is you want to have a number of cold turkey moments within a day and then within the next day. And that means that you walk up to the thing that is the bad habit. So for me, it's like I eat too many carbohydrates, or I watch YouTube when I'm supposed to be going to bed, or I have Twitch up when I'm working instead of focusing completely on the document that I'm working on, or the project that I'm working on. And you face the decision full on with the full emotional cadence of desire for it, and you say no. And you just agree to do that a couple times in a day. That builds up tolerance for you to say no again the second day. So you need these cold turkey moments to both empower you, give you the ability to actually choose your volitional action, right? Because you can choose your behavior. You can't choose how you feel about it. And also to kind of get that trigger out of the brain where you have the desire and you satiate it. So these cold turkey moments are really important to giving you the choice to just say no the next day. And it works much better than the long-term weaning approach. Although you should still do those things if they're helpful for you, and they will help you with maintenance continuously in the long run. But to kick off the train, to board that choo-choo train and start down the track, there's nothing that beats a couple cold turkey moments throughout the day where you face it. And even if one of them you fail, right, the other 3 will build up tolerance in you that you can use the next morning when you're kicking off your second day of this. And then your third day, right? So anytime that you fall off this, you just try to get that cold turkey moment again. That'll be the most resilience building thing. So that's what I recommend. Okay, let's jump into the second part of this question. So just as a reminder, the question was, how do I set good mindfulness triggers in-game? And what he's asking here is about the idea of taking meditation or mindfulness training and moving it from sitting cross-legged on a mat on the floor with your hands like this and going into a League of Legends game or onto a soccer pitch onto a soccer game or whatever, or a football game, and bringing that mindfulness into the game. How it's kind of equivalent to the metaphor of working out, and you build really strong muscles in the gym, but then you want to use them on the athletic field. So how do you bring them over there? With meditation, it's the same thing. You train your meditation in a seated posture, using a meditation script. How do you bring that into your game so that it makes a difference? Okay, so there's 2 ways this happens. Number 1 is automatic. Just as you're lifting weights in the gym, you get stronger. When you go on the athletic field, you're stronger and faster, just because you have stronger muscles. And that is exactly how it works with mindfulness. You're just going to become more mindful in the game because you're doing the meditation training. But the second thing that's important here, and the thing that I recommend in my program, so what Boyan is referring to in my Mac program, mindgames.gg/MAC, if I was doing post-editing, like I said that I hate doing, a URL would pop up right here, bing, with a little sound, but I don't, so it's not going to. Oh well. So what Boyan is talking about here is in the Mac program, I recommend bringing mindfulness into esport, with triggers. So, for example, let's use League of Legends. Obviously, you have to adapt this to your sport or your craft or whatever you're doing. And if it's League of Legends, great. But basically, you start off with the easiest, which is time-based. So you have a timer that goes off every 5 minutes, and what you want is body awareness. And so you do a centering exercise. And the centering exercise should be, for League of Legends, you breathe deeply and you feel your butt on the chair, because when you breathe deeply, you're either you're expanding your pelvic floor appropriately, or you're contracting it as a kegel. In which case, either way, you can kind of like feel it, the tenseness. So you feel your butt on the chair and you breathe deeply, and then you pay attention to the periphery, right? So you see the room that you're in and your mouse and your keyboard, and your goal is to increase your body awareness, because, and this is correlational. We don't know the causal triggers, okay, or the causal direction, but it's correlational that body awareness and high performance in a sport are correlated. So either people achieve very high levels in the sport and it gives them very high levels of body awareness, or people who have high levels of body awareness are more likely to be able to develop elite skills. But either way, it's an essential skill to have if you want to be a high performer. And body awareness in League of Legends and in esport is not in the monitor, okay? You have to get out of here. You have to get into your body. It's not that you got hit with the enemy skill shot or you're trying to move your champion around. It's that you are moving your mouse and your keyboard and you're coordinating those things, and it is in turn moving the game. So when you are practicing a skill or when you are doing something, you want to be moving your mouse and coordinating your keyboard presses, not moving your champion. And then when you screw that up, when you go in for the trade and you're aware of what you're doing, you can modify it. Your brain will modify it instead of trying to modify the champion or whatever kind of virtual reality you're in. So it'll be a much faster learning curve there. Okay, so first is time-based. Second is event-based. So you should do things that are repetitive, for example, every time you recall and you're going back to lane, you have a mindful moment where you're trying to center yourself out of the game and be aware of all the sensory input that you have and be mindful of the game and your body. And then the third one is in the action, right? So then you have something where okay, you're going to turn level 6 and you want to do the flash ultimate combo engage. So you take a moment and you're mindful and you step out and you look at and you do the thing with intention with your shoulders and with your fingers. And then your brain can notice what's going wrong and work to fix it and go and get faster and more accurate. You're a jungler and you're going for the gank, so you do it right before you're going to initiate the gank, as you're going in and you're visualizing and anticipating. When you're anticipating a play, that's when you should be able to do this. So you have to figure out for your role or your champion, when is that anticipatory moment that I can use to trigger to remind myself to do a mindfulness centering breath or 2 breaths. 1 breath or 2 breaths is literally all it takes. 15 seconds maybe to get in that focused moment. So that is what I recommend. Start with the time-based one. It's the easiest. Just have a timer goes off every 5 minutes. Reminds you to get body aware. Then you have the in-game triggers, in-game events like recalling, and then you have the anticipatory ones where you're going to anticipate something, and when you have that moment to breathe, then you can do it. And it sucks for bot lane because you how can you anticipate a trade? It's your support is going to be the one engaging, and vice versa with support. It's really hard to anticipate stuff back and forth without communication. So what you should do is the wave management. When the wave is crashing, you should anticipate how you're going to be hyper aware of controlling your champion to harass and hit the turret and still CS the wave as it's coming in and try to trade damage onto them and avoid skill shots. And when it's crashing onto you, you should be highly anticipatory and get very body aware of then how you're going to essentially CS and match and pay attention to the tower damage and your support's damage and dodge skill shots and dodge harass and harass them back at the same time, all while not losing CS, right? So these are the moments where you want to control your arms and your hands and your fingers and not your champion so that your brain can learn faster. Okay, let's jump into the last question, guys. And before I do, I want to promote the Mac program. So we talked about this already in the question, but this is my online video training program, 47 videos, 7 modules, 7 days every module, so 7 weeks. And it takes you through the development of these skills. Every single video is a lecture combined with a seated training. So like maybe 15, 20-minute lecture on slides, or maybe even a 5-minute lecture combined with a seated mindfulness training session that goes sequentially from like a 5-minute centering exercise all the way up to a 15-minute high focus, flow state inducing, or at least training mindfulness session at the very end of the program. And you can check it out, mindgames.gg/MAC. Use the code AskWeldon for your $5 discount. And this is how I support my channel. And currently, actually, since I got fired recently, anyway, the project I was on pretty much wrapped up. And so I'm done with that, and I don't have any income from that consulting gig anymore, so I need to go do more sales. But this is the only way I'm supporting myself as well. So you're supporting both the future development of this MindGames app, as well as the future development and work on my brand and my family and this channel and everything that I do with the Mac program. This is kind of like my sponsor, only I made it myself instead of going and getting a sponsor. And instead of buying a T-shirt, I'm giving you a training program. That's kind of how it works. I decided instead of getting a hat, maybe you would want like mental toughness. I don't know. Okay. Not that there's anything as hats. I'm going to release clothing eventually, once my brand's big enough, but I'm just saying, like, I thought my first thing I should make should be you being better at stuff. Last question. All right, I got to find the audio, guys. Sorry. I have this trans-theoretical model of behavior change up on my browser. Here it is.
Hey Weldon, Ryan here again. I was wondering what your thoughts are on being a perfectionist in both the gaming aspect and life in general. Do you think it's a good thing, or is it simply a ticking time bomb to an extent as you're striving for something that is unobtainable? Thanks.
All right, perfectionism question. I really love this question, and I like how you phrased it in particular. Yes, it's a ticking time bomb. Perfectionism done well versus perfectionism done badly. There's 2 ways to do perfectionism. If you do it badly, it is a ticking time bomb. And not only that, but because as you get higher and higher in your achievement level with bad perfectionism, you create and manifest bad habits that are getting more and more difficult to root out. It can be very explosive at the top. It's like a double-edged sword where it will get you to the top, right? But it will then keep you from getting to the tippy top. It actually prevents you from becoming a champion most of the time, and you just get to a high level and then implode when things start going wrong. So perfectionism done badly is not very conducive to championship performance. Sadly, perfectionism, period, done well or badly, is pretty good at getting you to a high level in your craft, okay? Because like perfectionists, right, they just are almost dysfunctional in their pursuit of high performance. Sorry, I should not have stretched. It induced my yawning. All right, so let's talk about perfectionism done badly and how it can be done well in 2 different cases. The end point when you have the result and the beginning point when you aren't doing it. So there's 2 things that can happen at the beginning. One is procrastination, where you like don't do the thing because you're afraid that you're not going to be able to do it well, and the other thing is where you're doing it and you don't like that it's not going well, and so you're coming up with excuses and kind of like abandon it, basically. So both of these are related to acceptance of what your skill level is and the ability to face fear that you will be exposed, like the imposter syndrome thing, right? So you have to work on your self-identity and your self-ego. And I use mantras for this. I use 2 mantras in particular because I'm rather perfectionistic. One of them is be so good they can't ignore you. So like use my actions to showcase who I am. And the second one is even if I can't do it today, that doesn't mean I can't do it someday. So this is more like I would watch these hypey YouTube videos, and I stole that from one of them. And just because I'm not good enough to do it today doesn't mean I won't be good enough to do it someday. And I use these to basically be like, okay, I'm going to showcase who and what I am, and I'm going to showcase my improvement, and I'm going to keep at it, and I'm going to be good enough someday to not be ignored. And so, like, it's a process, right? And I remind myself of that process every single time, and I try to fearlessly tackle the action point, right, and not procrastinate because of those two things. The other thing that can go wrong is that you flub up and then you start lashing out. And generally what's happening here is you're like attacking somebody else, or you're attacking a system, or you're just lashing out with your emotions at the environment or the world or whatever. And the problem is that you essentially are trying to cope with some internal states related to shame and guilt and self-perception of like who you are, your identity crisis, and you're trying to mollify them or cope with them by getting power over somebody else, being emotionally abusive or physically abusive or self-abusive or like just abusive to the world in general, abusing a keyboard or a mouse or something like that, abusing a desk surface with your fist. Whatever it is, you're essentially trying to escape or mollify or absolve these emotions without having to deal with them head on. So what you need to do for this, in order to change it from perfectionism done badly to perfectionism done well. So perfectionism done badly is a series of actions, right? It's like procrastination or lashing out or emotional abuse. Perfectionism done well is a mindset. You have the same initial reactions, right? But you deal with them and your actions line up with productive behaviors. So the perfectionism becomes a mindset that helps drive you on instead of a set of behaviors that causes you to explode at some point in the future when you peak with your career at where like your brain can't handle it because your perfectionism is incorrect and you've been building up bad habits all this time instead of dealing with stuff. So one of the things I recommend is read literally anything by Brené Brown so that you understand the concepts of shame and guilt and how they intertwine into like how it is that we're wired up. And then you work on forgiveness, which is like the fundamental aspect of self-mastery that you need to square away if you want to be a functional perfectionist. If you want to use your beautiful perfectionism to accelerate you into the promised land and make you into like an achiever, into the things that you want to do, if you want to turn perfectionism into like a tool that you can wield, you have to master self-forgiveness. You have to be able to escape shame, and you have to be able to like essentially have a conversation with somebody like either a significant other or a therapist or a journal or a self afterwards, and pick apart the event where you essentially became too emotionally abusive, or like you snapped or you were triggered too much, and like grow from it. So as an example here, yesterday I had a number of bad situations with my daughter, and I was able to master some of them, and then the last one just lost it, right? And I yelled at her. And I was emotionally abusive. I was a bad parent. That's what yelling is. And afterwards, I talked to my wife, and I was able to, pick apart the event and get to those core emotions and work on them, and then get slightly stronger, right? So that I'm more resilient next time to the tendencies I have to want everything to be squared away and perfectionistic, right? About like stop doing that so that this thing is beautiful and complete, and instead to like accept the frustration of the moment and the shame and the guilt and whatever it is that's like triggering me right in that moment, to like tolerate the messiness of life and is in all of its imperfect beauty, and to allow it to not trigger me. And so I'm one step closer, right? So you need to see it as a journey, like you're here, and it's not that you're like not like perfectionism. Okay, I've done it well, good. Okay, I've done it badly. It's like you're constantly trying to level up where your perfectionism takes hold and makes you do bad things, and you're trying to just constantly like push that barrier up as higher and higher, as high and high as it can go. I keep trying to say highly, to a highly relevant amount. I don't think highly fits in the sentence. As high as it can go, higher and higher, to the point where you can then essentially, go to nirvana or whatever. All right, that's the show for you today, guys. And sorry for the low energy. I think I'd nailed the answers. It was basically what I said the first time through. So you didn't miss anything out by not having by me accidentally muting my mic. You did miss out on a lot of excitement and energy and good posture and stuff like that. But I kind of expended all of that in the first 20 minutes. So thanks for tuning in. I'll see you tomorrow.